We go through 5 early round prospects and 5 late round prospects for the Chicago Bears to target next on the Unbearable Sports Podcast.
Yeah, she's got some nice long
Welcome back to the Unbearable Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Barron, and it has felt like quite some time. It's been a while since my last post, and I have been locked away, grinding the tape, getting ready for the draft season, and we have an exciting show going through all the safety prospects, like I was saying before. But then after this, we're going to be covering all the positions of need, 5 early round, 5 late round people that the Bears will be targeting. So if you're watching on YouTube, you want to make sure to like, subscribe, helps out the show tremendously. And also, if you can't watch the entire thing, you can always just download the podcast. Go to any podcast app, just search for Unbearable Sports. And for those listening on Spotify or Apple Podcast, make sure to rate it 5 stars. It helps absolutely tremendously. So thank you all so much, and let's get into this. So this is a really low-key need for the Bears, I feel. I feel like not a lot of people are talking about this, but the safety position right now, we don't really have a starter. Crookshank was brought in from the Titans, and he's not necessarily a true starter. He's kind of like a Deion Bush type, if you will. More of that backup, not an absolute incredible special teamer like DHC, but we really don't have a true starter next to Eddie Jackson. Some might say Eddie Jackson's not a true starter, but Eddie Jackson, to me, still, I want to see what he looks like in this defense. But DHC could potentially be that starter, but do you really trust that DHC is really going to be that starter? That's up for discussion. I love him as kind of the dime or big nickel type of defensive back, but I don't think that the Bears are necessarily in love with him. So that's why I think this is a huge area of need for them to attack in the draft. So like I said before, we're going to be going through 5 prospects that are most likely going to be available to the Bears at their second round and third round picks. And then we're moving over to the 5th and 6th rounders and kind of talking about who should we be targeting late. Is there some talent later on? We'll kind of go through that. So first, let's go through the first half of the draft. So really going into the early round. So we have our 2 picks early in the 2nd and another pick early in the 3rd. So who might be off of the board right up front? Now, the easiest one to say is going to be off the board is Kyle Hamilton, the safety out of Notre Dame. We don't really have to even get acquainted. If he is available, that's going to be an absolute crazy thing to happen because how versatile he is. So we can pretty much remove him from our draft board. He's not going to be available. If he is, we'll freak out, panic, and celebrate. But let's keep on going about who might actually be available. The number one player that could be available is Daxton Hill out of Michigan. Now, a lot of people also say that he's more of a cornerback rather than a safety. That's where on some websites, you might see him as cornerback Daxton Hill rather than safety. But a lot of experts, majority of them, are projecting Daxton Hill out of Michigan to be a true safety. So what do we know about him? Well, I looked at the average draft positions and the consensus. There's a giant consensus board out there, and everyone has him going around 29th and 30th. So he still will probably go end of the first round, but there is a good chance that he could potentially drop to the Bears. PFF has him going around 34, and our first pick is 39. So he might be able to fall to us, but if he does, what do we expect? So what Daxton Hill really is he's got a lot of pop and explosiveness. That's really some of the stuff that really stands out on the tape. Is just he has phenomenal speed, and that's the reason why a lot of people are saying he's kind of that first rounder. Now, he did play a decent amount in the slot. That's what we really saw out of his tape out of Michigan. And we know that we kind of need a slot player. We have a weird kind of defensive back situation because corners, are we really trying to test someone out? Do they like Duke Shelley? Do they want somebody else in that slot to kind of compete? So that's why I do kind of like having someone like a Daxton Hill if he's available, because he has some of that versatility. Now, he's also a very aggressive tackler, which you love in this system. They talk about just being aggressive, just being physical, and he fits that mold. He's speedy, he's fast, and he's also very, very physical. Now, why would he potentially drop? What are some of the downsides of him? Now, one of the biggest things is, even though that he's got this burst, got this great speed to him, he only has 4 interceptions in 3 full years of playing. Not the best when you talk about somebody who could be a first rounder. That's why some people are saying he might be dropping a little bit more too. Also, he's a little bit weak. He has a very light play strength, if you will. So because of that, a lot of people are kind of questioning, is he going to be a true safety because of his overall play strength? That's why some are saying, no, just leave him as a corner, leave him as a slot corner rather than more of a safety. But also, he played primarily in the box. And what I noticed when looking at his PFF grades, he actually struggled playing deep safety, which is most likely what the Chicago Bears would be playing. They want someone fast. They want somebody who's explosive, willing to tackle. But also, we might be playing a lot of cover 2. And that's predominantly what Eberflus ran with the Colts. So if we're running more of a cover 2 system, we want somebody who can really kind of play that deep, the deep safety role. And Daxton Hill, I think he's got the burst. He's got a lot of the athletic pieces that you want from a speed perspective, but that's why he could potentially be falling, is some people look at him and go, he played a little bit more in the box, but he doesn't have that pop, doesn't have that size. So is he kind of this tweener? That's kind of a weapon. Is he just a slot? And that's why you're seeing him kind of drop down. But he's got a lot of speed, and if he's available, sounds like a great prospect for the Bears to potentially bring in to add some extra speed. But let me know down in the comments what you believe about Daxton Hill. But let's move to the next one. And this is a guy that I see a lot of people mocking to the Bears, and that is Lewis Kine out of Georgia. Now, he's typically going around the consensus board. He's going around 35th overall. But overall is about the 38th prospect to be added. So how that adds up, that's what the consensus board says. So about that 35, 38. So right before the Chicago Bears, but still can be available. So what should we know about him? Well, he's a really good physical player, 6'2", 199, and also something that's awesome is that he's got great vision. When you see him, you can tell that he's a very disciplined, well-educated player because he kind of sees what's going on and understands what's happening around him. Great to have as a safety because a lot of times you're the person in the back and you're kind of supervising what's going on in front of you. So by having somebody that's similar that can do something like that is very good. That's why a lot of people like him in kind of this late first, early second round type of range. But what a lot of people aren't really big fans of him on is that he even though that he's 6'2", he's a big player, he doesn't play like that. When I was watching some of his tape, I didn't love how he was kind of wrapping up. It seemed rather wimpy, honestly, when I was looking at it. Like something about it just didn't seem right. And that's why I'm not a huge fan of him. He doesn't have ball skills, so he's not going to be, going over the top and intercepting the ball. He's just a smart player that's a very big freak. He blew the doors off at the combine like all the other Georgia players did, and everyone's like, this guy's crazy. And really that combine performance is why we're seeing him kind of go in that first round range and in that early second. And to me, that's what I always get a little bit nervous. Is he going to be overdrafted because of that amazing combine performance, because of his physical tools? Also, he's not great at man-to-man. he would be a safety, but really he's not great at mirroring. Like we said, he's very intellectual. So for him, it's really about reading where everybody's at, which is what you want in a safety. But if you have to be a little bit more flexible, you're running a blitz or something like that, you just like to have them not be a liability out there in man coverage. But really, I think, to me, he's more of a talent of like a late 2, early 3, but I believe because of the scouting combine, he's being moved up. Now, I don't mean to be negative on him. There's obviously lots of things to love about him with his smartness and his vision, but I'm just curious to see how he actually would play as a true cover 2. And that's why I don't think he's a great scheme fit for us, but we shall see what the Bears end up doing at that safety position. So next, that's 2 so far. And we keep going down with kind of the average position that people are going to be drafted. The next person that is going to be out there is Jaquan Brisker, the safety out of Penn State. You might have heard him. You might have seen some of the news that we posted out on Instagram and Twitter. The Chicago Bears have already been talking to Jaquan Brisker, the safety from Penn State. He's also was supposed to be a first-round pick, but he's slowly starting to drop down a lot of these draft boards. Before, he was really kind of going kind of at that 28 range. Now, we're seeing him go on majority of mock drafts at around that 44 spot. The Draft Network and PFF still have him around 39 and 41, but still, the consensus is saying around the spot of 44. So he would be available for that first second round pick that we have and could be available for our second round pick if we really want to get a little bit dangerous, if you will, to kind of hopefully he would drop then. But why is he dropping? And also, what type of a player is he? Jaquan Brisker, think about him like a box safety. This is where I don't love him in the Bears scheme because of that box safety role, but still, you just see him, he flies to the ball. And anytime that you see a player that's always around the ball, that's the type of player I personally want on my team. Because you shouldn't really have to be watching, like, where is this person when you're watching some of the tape? Because it's college, you should be the best player, especially if you're investing a first round or an early second on somebody. And Brisker pops off. He is like I said, an incredible run stuffer, can go up, hit with people, kind of seal the edge very well. He also had a 27.3% forced incompletion. So when the ball's in the air, he's still able to make plays on it. Even though he's a quote unquote box guy, he's still able to do that. And he doesn't necessarily have he actually still has a pretty big frame, 6'1", 199. That's great. That's what we want to see out there. That's good size for a safety. So yet again, he's a very good physical beast. But the problem is he's really good at moving forward. And when you have a safety, you want him to move backwards. You want to make sure that everybody is kept in front of him. So that's why you see him kind of moving back, is that he's a really good box player. But when he has to be kind of that deep cover safety, that's where a lot of questions are coming out there. And PFF's grades, they actually really like him when he has played that deep coverage, that deep safety type of role that he would be playing in kind of a cover 2. But one thing that I want to include as well about this is I actually kind of like him in a deep cover 2 because of this. If you're already playing deep and he accelerates, he's good at going forward, it could be actually a good system for him because he doesn't have to kind of like track and kind of backpedal. He already should be back, so then he can kind of play to his strengths and play to his burst. But really, like we said, really kind of the questions are him moving backwards and kind of shifting his hips a little bit because he's great with everything in front, but also that's why there's some questions with his coverage overall, because when he has to track a wide receiver specifically, it's just a little bit difficult for him to kind of shift his hips while he's trying to cover rather than just trying to play downhill and be a great run stuffer, because that's what he's kind of shown. So really, so far, what we've seen is a kind of a speedster with Daxton Hill that can kind of be a slot guy. We've seen Lewis Kine, who is a intellectual type of player. And then we have Brisker, who's kind of more that hard nose, playing in front of him type of a player. But this next guy, is honestly one of my favorite prospects for the Chicago Bears, and that is Jalen Pitre, the slot corner slash safety out of Baylor. A lot of people do have him as a safety, and a lot of people too also have him as a slot corner. That's really where he played, slot corner and safety. But he's 5'11", 198. He's going, which I think is crazy late. On average, pick 60 or like kind of 58 to 60. For PFF, they have him as usually around the 41st, and the Draft Network has him around 50th. So really, he could be with our first or second round pick, which I absolutely love. See, Jalen Pitre really came on his senior year, which is kind of a red flag for some people, but you could just see that he is just kind of transformed. You see the way that he plays, and to me, he's the most all-around safety, if you will, that I've seen so far that we're going through right now. Why? He can play everywhere. He did that for Baylor. He played the slot. And here's the thing. He was a phenomenal run defender, was able to really, truly shed blocks, also really gets his head in there and makes the tackle. What I love about him too is because of that positional versatility, the Bears could try him out at safety, or they could say, you know what? We really need a new slot guy. Let's have him out there as a slot. So I love his versatility. I think that he's a phenomenal player. I remember watching him at the Senior Bowl, just super, super impressive. You saw him always lock down his guy. So he kind of showed, listen, it wasn't a fluke year. I'm this good. I can cover whoever you throw out in front of me. So that's why he's one of my favorite prospects for the Bears to get, especially if we could go with like a wide receiver with our first pick or an offensive lineman, and then you get this guy who's kind of a plug and play starter at the safety or cornerback position. Sign me up. Now, there's some questions about just his size with being 5'11". Is he big enough to play that safety role? And this is something that I found very, very interesting. One of the safeties for the Indianapolis Colts, Julian Blackmon, is 6 foot 187. He's not that big of a player, and actually Pitre has more weight on him than a Justin Blackmon or a Julian Blackmon. So to me, I really like Jalen Pitre in this defense because they're probably looking at this going, he kind of reminds me a little bit of Blackmon. He's kind of the same size, and so I like him out there. He can tackle, he can stuff the run, he can cover someone, he can play man, he can play zone, whatever you want. He's very, very good. But really, that's where, when you're looking at the cons, I'm telling you all the stuff that I love because I love him as a player. But yet again, when someone sees 1 year of production, is it everything just seemed to click? Or did he, why was it? Was it just a fluke year? And to me, I don't feel like this is a fluke year. But also some people really kind of question, he played predominantly in the slot. Can he actually be a safety? He's too short for a safety because he's not 6 foot. So that's why a lot of questions are coming out there that he's too small, that he has 1 year, but that doesn't scare me off because I just see it as versatility, and I see him, when you watch the tape, to me, he's the most well-rounded safety that's out there. He can play the ball. He can do everything that you need out of a safety, out of a slot. So that's why I love Jalen Pitre out of Baylor. But then the last guy, so I kind of had this up to 2. Like I said, I just wanted to do 5. So I'll do one I'll cheat. I'll do one really, really quickly, and then I'll do another one fairly quickly as well. So like we did 4 that really are more of in our second round range with Pitre, Brisker, Cine, and Hill. Those are kind of second round picks, if you will. Then as we go to that third round, what if we waited? What if we waited a little bit? Now, there's 2 guys that would be available. That's Nick Cross out of Maryland and Kirby Joseph out of Illinois. The consensus board has Nick Cross going around 88 and Kirby Joseph going around 90. So both of them should be available to us. Nick Cross out of Maryland, Kirby Joseph out of Illinois. Now, I'll just quickly go through Nick Cross. We'll do Nick Cross real quick. He's 6'2", 212, just a really freak of nature as an athlete. Just crazy speed, crazy size, absolutely amazing, but he's very, very undisciplined. And even though that he's huge, you would expect him to have a lot of pop. Doesn't really have that. So you're really kind of banking on him as an athlete rather than a true player, a true cover guy. So that's why Nick Cross First round athlete, definitely. But as a player, really kind of needs to develop a little bit more. That's why you're seeing him drop to actually even like the late threes. But then Kerby Joseph, let's go through him a little bit more as that true fifth prospect. Like we said, he's kind of going around the 90s a little bit, but he's 6'1", 203 out of Illinois. Similar to a Pitre, has 1 year production, but it's a little bit different. Pitre was at least playing, but really everything didn't click until his final season. While with Kerby Joseph, he just flat out didn't play. And then now he comes in and he's looking great. He's looking like a ball hawk. And that's why you see him in that third round range. Why was he on the bench this whole time? He's got really he's got long arms, great size for the position, 26.3% forced incompletion, 5 interceptions last year, and really a true deep safety. So when you're talking about a cover 2 system, it's a dream come true. Smart player. And the only thing though is, so we have all this awesomeness. He doesn't have phenomenal speed. Like we said too, 1 year of really awesome, just absolutely incredible production. And why didn't he see the field? So was it really just he wasn't good enough? And is this a fluke? And also too, with his feet and quickness, it's just not truly there. It's not amazing. It's not incredible. So that's why a lot of people are kind of questioning Kerby Joseph. But he could be there with our third round pick if we really needed a safety and really wanted to try, and he could compete for one of those starting spots. So let me know who your favorite early round safety prospect is. If there's someone that I missed, like I said, I was just trying to go through 5 and I cheated and did 6 because there's a good handful of them that are still out there. Do I think, though, that the Bears will actually go safety? I honestly think so, because there's still a couple that are still available, but you really do need a safety. You need a starting safety. And we're not going to be most likely, we're not going to get a starting safety later on with our 5th and 6th types of rounders. So that's why I love the idea of just trying to go with somebody early. But let's say we miss one. Let's say that we don't. Let's say that the board falls perfect and we have some awesome wide receivers, awesome linemen, a linebacker. We have some great people. Who could we target late? Like I said, I don't love the idea of them going with someone late, but if we had to, who would be out there? 5 people that we could at least keep our eyes out for. Now, the first one, you've heard me talk about him before, and that's Marquise Bell out of Florida A&M. He is a beast. He's 6'2", 216. To me, he could be a steal of the draft. And people go, why didn't he get selected? He actually was playing for Maryland before going to Florida A&M. But really, what he ended up doing is he did something. I don't know what. There's some potential character concerns where he had to leave the Maryland team, and he ultimately transferred because something went wrong. There was an off the field hiccup. So you have a question mark with the character concerns, but really what you're seeing is just an absolute physical beast. He played more in the box, which, like I said before, we're really looking for safeties that can play deep. I looked at the Indianapolis Colts roster, and majority of the safeties played majority of the snaps in deep coverage. While usually, like for the Bears, it might be some 50-50 for some of those players, but really with that, a lot of them are playing deep. A lot of them are playing kind of that cover 2 shell. So you would want somebody that can really play back there. But Marquise Bell still at least has the size. He's got the speed, great ball production, can really kind of go up there and just really imposes his will like crazy. But why is he potentially falling? Why is he someone that really, where would he go? I've seen some people say he's going in the 3rd. I've seen some people saying he's undrafted. He's really all over the board. There's no way to track him unless you absolutely need somebody like that. Then you might go super aggressive if you absolutely love him. But really, I define it as reckless eye discipline. He's kind of that guy where he knows that he's better than everyone else out there with his level of competition. And you can see that he's always just trying to make a big play. Rightfully so, because he's gigantic, he's faster than everybody, so I get that. But still, as a talent evaluator from the NFL, you're kind of looking at this going, is that just because he's better than everyone? And also, is this coachable? Can you coach that out of him because he needs that eye discipline? Like we said, he played more in the box, so he played more like a linebacker sometimes. But like we said, he's got all the physical traits that you want out of a safety for the Chicago Bears. Next guy is JT Woods. He's been kind of going in the 4th round, but he could be someone that we get with one of our first 5th round picks. Now, JT Woods is also out of Baylor. He was kind of the running mate with Pitre. But really, some of the pros, 6'2", blazing fast, flies to the ball like crazy, makes big plays. You love to see it. The cons, he makes a lot of mistakes. He really relies on his athleticism. I think he ran in the 4.3s, just incredible speed, but he really relies on his athleticism because if he messes up, he can then just track someone down. So that's why you kind of question that, because in the NFL, when you have other people that run as fast as you can't necessarily make that up with just your speed. And also, too, he's not a super physical player. You see him make tackles, and it's kind of wimpy a little bit. So do we really want him out there as our safety? We'd probably want somebody that's a little bit more physical, but that's, yet again, why he's dropping, why he's a late-round prospect. None of these guys are going to be perfect, so that's why I like him later on as just somebody to be on the lookout for, because he could potentially make those big plays. Now next, another person, this is actually one of my favorites, and that's Reed Blankenship out of mid Tennessee State. So he is 6'1", 200 pounds, and he was on Bruce Feldman's freak list because he ran a 4.5, 38-inch vertical, just an absolute good physical specimen. We see him going in the 6th round. I think it's just criminal because he's also an incredible fit for our cover 2 system. He's a very reliable tackler. He had 106 tackles, 10 for loss last year at the safety position. Very good speed, like what we were talking about. Incredible vision. Very smart player. Runs well. He checks all the boxes. That's why for me, I'm kind of going, why is he going that late? And he kind of like a good comp is kind of Daniel Sorensen, where he can be a starter, he can be a good player, but what I love about him and drafting him late is he can also be a very, very good special teams person. He actually was a punt returner, but even as a gunner, he could do the same thing. Like we said, bigger, sound tackler. So to me, I love him in the Bears scheme. And I honestly think if the Bears drafted him in the 5th, 6th round, I do think he could potentially be a starter because of the scheme fit in the cover 2. Now, why else would he be kind of falling a little bit? It's really just he broke his leg in 2019. So some questions about durability, lower level of competition with playing at Middle Tennessee State, and also not incredible long speed as a safety. But that's where a lot of people are saying as a cover 2, people really like that because you're kind of trying to put people in front of you. So very disciplined, very smart player. I would go crazy if the Bears ended up getting him. Look him up, Reed Blankenship, great safety. I absolutely love him. Let me know what you think too. But now we're getting down to our final 2 safety prospects late. Yet again, no one's going to be as great as Reed Blankenship in my mind, but still there's some good people still down here. And one is Tycen Anderson out of Toledo. He is, yet again, another safety. 6'2", 210, ran a 4.36 40 times, so very fast, very big. And the good thing, too, more of that he can definitely be a special teamer as kind of his like kind of floor. So that's what you like to see out of some of these later round picks. You just want to add some depth. So that's why I think he could come in, be a special teamer for you if you really, really need that. The cons, he's kind of a tweener. Even though that he's really big, he kind of plays more as like a dime linebacker, as the big nickel. That's really where you saw him be his best. So he's big, but he likes to play that linebacker role, but he's not big enough. So that's why you see him kind of dropping and could be kind of like a DHC. Think of it a little bit like that, but actually a little bit bigger than DHC. And also only 2 interceptions in the last 3 years. Like we said, more of like a smaller, skinnier linebacker. That's really what Tycen Anderson is. And the last one is Verone McKinley. I don't have his college up, but I believe it was might have been Oregon. Let me just double check that real quick. But really, what he had was 3 interceptions. He had 11 interceptions in 3 years. An absolutely incredible type of player. But really, why we see him kind of dropping. He has a nose for the ball, absolute ball hawk. He's 5'10", 198. So he's really more of a cornerback type of a build. And yeah, he is out of Oregon. Just wanted to kind of confirm. But a lot of people see him out there and they're like, that's a corner. And you see him play and you go, that's a corner. He doesn't necessarily look like a true safety, built like a cornerback, like we said, but he has a nose for the ball. He's always around it. And yet again, like we said, when you see that, it jumps off the tape. But also something that does jump off the tape as well in a bad way, he missed about 18% of the tackles that he attempted. He's not a good tackler. Not a good tackler at all. The big reason why I think he's dropping and why a lot of people see him dropping is you see this guy that looks like a tweener because he looks like a cornerback. He's got a cornerback build, but he's a safety that can't tackle. Because he can't tackle, a lot of people will probably look at him and go, well, I don't want him playing special teams. He's not a special teams player. And typically, if you're trying to draft someone late, you want them to be a special teams player, at least as a minimum. And to him, I don't think he's a special teamer. I think he competes for a starting job. That's what's really interesting about him as a prospect. I think he comes in and tries to compete for a starting position, but doesn't play special teams. And so that's why you see him falling, because of that lack of versatility, the lack of potential, the potential lack of him being able to play other spots besides that safety position. So that's about it. That's 5 prospects early round, 5 prospects late round. Let me know what you think. Who are some of your favorite safety prospects to be on the lookout for? Like I said, too, so our top 5 are Daxton Hill, Cine, Jaquan Brisker out of Penn State, Jalen Pitre, and Kirby Joseph. That isn't in any particular order. My favorite is Jalen Pitre. I will be going crazy if the Bears end up getting him. But late round, Marquise Bell, JT Woods, Reed Blankenship, Tyson Anderson, and Verone McKinley. Lots of good prospects, and we'll see what the Bears end up doing. Thank you all so much for watching, listening, however you're digesting this. Just thank you. It means so much. It's incredible to just be able to talk Chicago Bears, and I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you so much. And Unbearable Sports Podcast, we're out.
Yeah, she's got some nice long hair, and you know that she's a bad chick.
Thank you for listening to this Belly Up Sports Podcast Network product. Some said we go belly up, so we made it our name, and we're still here.